you were a tennis player, who would you want to be like?
Well, I like other people to be like me.
The gold medal goes to Serena Williams, and it only took a little over 1 hour.
Serena Williams, winner of 5th Australian Open title, the most in the Open era.
A moment we might not see again in history.
She's amassed 23 Grand Slam singles titles, 16 Grand Slam doubles titles, 4 Olympic gold medals, 843 match wins, 319 weeks at world number 1, and over $93 million in prize money. She's the most decorated tennis player and one of the greatest athletes ever to walk the earth. To achieve all that, she's had to overcome chronic injuries, life-threatening illnesses, personal tragedy, relentless pressure, and racism, often coded, sometimes overt, from fans and the tennis establishment. At 39 years old, 25 years after she turned pro, and 21 years after she won her first major, she was the most feared player in the women's game. So how did this Compton-raised black woman become the GOAT in a historically affluent, overwhelmingly white sport? This is the story behind Serena Williams. Serena Williams was born in Saginaw, Michigan to Oracene Price and Richard Williams. She had several half-siblings from Oracene's and Richard's previous marriages, but only one full sibling, her older sister, Venus.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Tennis player. I like to be a tennis player.
The story goes that Richard Williams flipped on the TV one day, watched the great Romanian player Virginia Ruzici win a tournament, and decided right there and then that his daughters would be pro tennis players.
I had watched a tennis match on TV, and they was giving this young lady $40,000 because she won the tournament. And I figured since I worked for $52,000 all year, and this girl make $40,000 in 4 days, I knew I was in the wrong business.
He moved the family from Long Beach to Compton, California, where he homeschooled the girls and began to train them on rough and tumble public courts in gang territory with shopping carts full of used balls from the time they were 4 years old. That was part of his plan to mold his daughters not only to be great tennis players, but into tough, strong-minded, fearless competitors.
There you go. That's great.
When Serena was 9 and Venus 10, the family moved to Florida to attend a prestigious tennis academy and begin competing in junior tournaments. 4 years later, Richard pulled the girls out of the academy and began coaching them himself. They each turned pro at 14, Venus in 1994 and Serena in 95. Before the Williams sisters showed up, the women's game was predicated more on touch, finesse, and consistency rather than raw power. But once Venus and Serena brought their ball-bashing baselining to the WTA, the rest of the tour had to adapt. Once Serena became a permanent fixture on tour, she overwhelmed her opponents with her thundering ground strokes, her masterful manipulation of angles, her foot speed, her athleticism, and her serve, which was a weapon unlike any women's tennis had ever seen. But her greatness wasn't just about skill. It was about her smoldering intensity, her unshakable will, her refusal to tolerate or even contemplate the notion of defeat. She won her first major 2 weeks before her 18th birthday, beating Martina Hingis in the 1999 US Open Final. While Venus was the first of the sisters to reach world number 1 and won 5 of their first 6 head-to-heads, it wasn't long before Serena began to separate herself. She'd later say that the turning point in their on-court rivalry came when she stopped looking at Venus during their matches because seeing her sister's disappointed face made it impossible to try her hardest to win. Together, they formed an unbeatable tandem that racked up countless doubles titles. But their singles matches against each other was tense and uncomfortable. For reasons that should be obvious, they never played as well or competed as fiercely against one another as they did against everybody else. In their early years, that fueled speculation that Richard was rigging the outcomes, a baseless theory that was perpetuated by commentators like John McEnroe and fellow players like Elena Dementieva. Even as the Williams sisters raised the sports profile and brought it to a completely new audience, their ascent wasn't exactly greeted with open arms by the tennis world of the 90s. There was resistance to their aggressive playstyle, their physical stature, the loudness of their games and their outfits, even their braided and beaded hair.
Well, you can hear them and you can see them a little bit. I mean, fortunately, you learn to play the ball, but I'm not going to say it was a total distraction, but it is a little annoying maybe.
No, I shouldn't have to change for any other circumstance. I like my hair.
It's just things flying in the air that you're not supposed to be seeing.
All of this reached a boiling point in 2001 at Indian Wells. Venus and Serena rolled through their draws to set up a hotly anticipated semifinal, but just minutes before they were set to take the court, Venus pulled out with a knee injury, enraging the fans in attendance and setting off the accusations of a Williams family fix. When Venus and Richard showed up to watch Serena play Kim Clijsters in the final the next day, they were greeted with a chorus of boos that Richard claimed were peppered with racial slurs.
And the crowd, an American crowd, booing an American family. And you have to say that it does smack of a little bit of racism.
Serena, just 19 at the time, walked onto the court not knowing why the fans were seething, why their boos turned into cheers anytime she double faulted or committed an unforced error, or why when she beat Clijsters and went to hug her sister and father in the crowd, the boos rained down louder than ever. She would later say that she too heard racial slurs that day. The sisters boycotted the tournament for the next 14 years. At every other tournament, they continued to dominate. Later that year, they met in the US Open final with Venus prevailing. Then, between 2002 and 2003, Serena went on an all-time tear that saw her win all 4 majors in a row, completing what came to be called the Serena Slam. All 4 times, it was Venus she beat in the final. But just 6 months later, Venus and Serena's oldest half-sister, Yetunde Price, was killed in a shooting in Compton. The sisters had all been extremely close, and Yetunde had been a part of Venus and Serena's traveling team on the tour for a time. She was working as a nurse at the time she was murdered and had 3 children. Serena sat out 8 months and returned to match play in 2004. As she sought out to regain her world-beating form, her progress kept getting interrupted by injuries to her knee, ankle, abdomen, rib, groin, shoulder, knee again, ankle again. She pursued off-court interests and became an increasingly inconsistent presence in the game. Some began to question her desire. After the run in 2002 and 2003, in which she won 5 slams in a 13-month period, she won just 1 over the next 4 years. That included a 6-month stretch in 2006 when Serena stepped away from tennis entirely. She told reporters she was dealing with an injury, but later she revealed that she was actually suffering from depression stemming from Yetunde's murder. Her ranking fell to 140th in the world. According to Serena, it was a chance encounter with a starry-eyed young fan that finally motivated her to reassert herself as the best player in the sport. Though she started the 2007 season out of shape and unseeded at the Australian Open, she scrapped her way to the finals where she demolished Maria Sharapova 6-1, 6-2.
Yeah. The fairy tale comeback is complete. Serena Williams, for the 3rd time, is the champion in Melbourne.
And most of all, I would like to dedicate this win to my sister, who's not here. Her name is Yetunde. And I just love her so much. A couple days ago, I said, if I win this, it's going to be for her. So thanks, Yetunde.
It was the second of 19 straight wins she'd record against Sharapova over the next 13 years, turning an opponent many tried to bill as a rival into a hapless punching bag. 2008 brought another slam title and a return to world number 1. 2009 brought 2 more slams, though it's likely remembered better for featuring one of the ugliest incidents of Serena's career, one in which her famed intensity got the better of her. In the US Open semi-final against Clijsters, Serena was down a set, serving to stay in the match. Trailing 15-30, she was called for a questionable foot fault on a second serve, which brought up match point. Incensed at the timing of the call for a selectively enforced rule, Serena approached the lineswoman who had made the ruling and said, "I swear to God, I will fucking take this ball and shove it down your fucking throat."
I didn't say I would kill you. Are you serious?
Serena, who'd received a warning for smashing a racket earlier in the match, was given a point penalty which ended the match. She was hit with a record fine and placed on 2 years probation by the Grand Slam committee. The incident colored the perception of her within the sport for years thereafter. Serena issued a public apology, then put her head down and kept winning. She took home another 2 major titles in 2010, but in July of that year, just 4 days after winning Wimbledon for a 4th time, she stepped on broken glass in a restaurant while wearing sandals and lacerated a tendon in her right foot. In the course of 2 surgeries that followed, she developed a life-threatening pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs, for which she had to undergo emergency treatment. At the time, she'd won 13 Grand Slams. She was 30 years old. No one would have blamed her for hanging up her racket right then. After all, Steffi Graf, the consensus GOAT before Serena came around, had retired at the same age.
I wouldn't push the retirement button yet, because I think this girl has proved over and over, when you count her up, here she is again, and she shows up and wins not only big tournaments, but Grand Slams.
Serena decided to press on. She refocused, put more work into her body, hired Patrick Mouratoglou as her coach, and produced a second act that's arguably been even more impressive than the first. Since then, she's won another 10 slams, which is more than all but 5 women have won in their careers. In 2013, she retook the world #1 ranking for a 6th time, becoming the oldest woman in the Open era to claim it. She then proceeded to hold the top spot for 186 consecutive weeks, tying the record Graf had set 25 years earlier. In 2015, she won the year's first 3 majors, which, following her 2014 US Open title, completed her 2nd Serena Slam more than 12 years after the first one.
And also, we can now mention the S word, the Serena Slam. It's happened!
4 days after winning the Australian to claim the 2nd of those 4 straight majors, she announced that she would return at long last to Indian Wells. She said she came to the decision in the wake of Michael Brown's death at the hands of police in Ferguson, Missouri, and saw it as a chance to speak out against racism. As part of her much publicized return, she partnered with the Equal Justice Initiative and raised $200,000. In her first match, Serena walked out to a decidedly different reception.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the #1 player in the world, Serena Williams!
Later that year at the US Open, Serena had a chance to both complete her first calendar slam by winning all 4 majors in the same year, and to tie Graf's Open era record with her 22nd slam title, but suffered the most stunning defeat of her career in the semifinals against aging doubles specialist Roberta Vinci. Serena took the rest of the year off. Then, as she always does, she bounced back. She equaled Graf's mark by winning Wimbledon in 2016, and finally, at the 2017 Aussie Open, more than 17 years after winning her first major, she claimed her record-setting 23rd. And as it turns out, she won that tournament while she was 8 weeks pregnant. It was the last match Serena would play for over a year. She announced her pregnancy shortly thereafter and gave birth to her daughter, Alexis Olympia Ohanian Jr., in September. The delivery was anything but smooth. An emergency C-section led to a series of harrowing complications, another pulmonary embolism, a hematoma in her stomach, and later hemorrhaging at the site of the C-section. 5 surgeries ensued. Serena later revealed that the doctors at the hospital initially disregarded her when she told them what was happening, and her outspokenness about the ordeal brought the attention to an underreported crisis in the American healthcare system, which is that black women in the US are 3 to 4 times more likely than white women to die of pregnancy or childbirth-related causes. Serena spent weeks in bed recovering, during which she described suffering from postpartum depression. In time, though, she was able to turn her focus back to her career and return to the tour. In just her second Grand Slam as a mother, she made the Wimbledon final. It was a sign of things to come, an indication that she could still very much contend, but that the going was getting tougher. She's since lost 3 more Slam finals to 3 separate opponents and hasn't won a set in any of them. The most acrimonious of those finals came at the US Open in 2018 against Naomi Osaka. Trailing in the match, Serena received a code violation when chair umpire Carlos Ramos noticed Mouratoglou making a hand gesture that he interpreted as illegal coaching from her box.
If he gives me a thumbs up, he's telling me to come on. We don't have any code, and I know you don't know that, and I understand why you may have thought that was coaching, but I'm telling you it's not. I don't cheat to win. I'd rather lose. I'm just letting you know.
It was a coaching violation. I guess it was a thumbs up, and Serena's setting him straight.
He issued her a second code violation when she smashed her racket several games later, which resulted in an automatic point penalty. When she confronted him about the calls, he gave her a third violation, this one for verbal abuse, which cost her a whole game. 1 game later, she lost the match. The aftermath was an ugly scene in which the pro-Serena crowd drowned out the trophy ceremonies with boos, while a 20-year-old Osaka, after decisively outplaying Serena to win her first Grand Slam, pulled her visor over her eyes and sobbed. Some blamed Ramos for overstepping, some blamed Serena for inciting the crowd with her reaction. Some did, well, this. Look, Serena isn't above criticism. She's human, she's imperfect, and she's never tried to hide it. But because of what she's come to mean, not just to her sport, but to the world, it often feels like she's expected to be more than that. But at the end of the day, Serena's imprint on women's tennis dwarfs that of anyone aside from maybe Billie Jean King. Her popularity took the sport to new heights, and her power forever changed the way it's played. The players who are rising up in today's game are players she helped to inspire to take up the sport in the first place.
Well, it was always my dream to play Serena in the US Open finals, so I'm really glad that I was able to do that, and I'm really grateful I was able to play with you. Thank you.
This wasn't the only time I visualized playing in the finals, actually against Serena Williams. It's so crazy, man. I've been dreaming of this moment for the longest time.
Her impact also extends beyond the court. Serena's a global icon, a business mogul with her own fashion line, and a philanthropist whose charity foundation has funded the construction of schools in Kenya and Jamaica and university scholarships for underprivileged students in the US. In 2016, she and Venus founded the Utundi Price Resource Center in Compton, a community center that provides support services to families affected by violence. She's also a pretty attentive working mom, if you haven't noticed. At this point, the lone marker that can conceivably be held against Serena as the greatest of all time is that Margaret Court won 24 Grand Slams compared to her 23. But Court won more than half of her majors during an era in which only amateurs were allowed to compete at them, back when the draws ran just 32 players deep. Still, the chase for Court's record has become a capital T thing, not just for fans or the media, but to Serena personally, if for no other reason than she is a born striver.
In August of 2022, Serena announced that she was evolving away from tennis in hopes of working with her own venture capital firm and spending more time with her family. And while she's probably stepping away from the sport following what may be a fitting final chapter at the 2022 US Open, the same place she started her highly decorated career all the way back in 1999, there's no question the massive imprint she leaves behind as the sport's most prevailing champion and one of the greatest athletes of all time.
If you were a tennis player, who would you want to be like?
Well, I like other people to be like me.
That's a good answer.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button.